Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of the Gridiron Review. Alongside Bill Wagner, I'm Pete Medhurst. It's great to have you with us. Bill, the football machine that is Old Mill, keeps on chugging along. 16 straight regular season wins. Pete Boone goes over 100 yards against Broadneck running the football, which is very difficult to do. And right now, the Patriots, Bill, they're as close to a machine as we have right now in this county, still unbeaten, and they met their stiffest challenge of the season. And now, with one more still to go, of course, with Annapolis still ahead of them as well. What a titanic game that now turns into, with the Panthers only having one loss here late in the season.
Well, first of all, Old Mill under Coach Chad McCormick this is going on, a decade of outstanding football where they're a perennial playoff contender. And for most of that time, they've been the premier program in Anne Arundel County. Tremendous job by their coaching staff. This kid, Kamari Wilkerson, probably deserves to be in the Player of the Year conversation, Pete.
Yeah,
he is both sides of the ball, which I always appreciate. When I'm picking Player of the Year, I always lean to a guy that plays both ways. Kamari Wilkerson had a big fumble recovery in return for a touchdown that was kind of a game changer. He also threw a pass on a little trickery, halfback option. He threw a great pass. Apparently, he used to be a quarterback in his younger days. So he deserves to be in that conversation. But Old Mill is a complete team, loaded with athletes. And you're right, Pete. This game with Annapolis is shaping up as a doozy, and Annapolis has gone from a much improved program to a very, very good program right before our eyes. Nick Goodbeloy, it's got to be the leader for Coach of the Year, and it's based off of several years of building that program into suddenly being one of the top teams in the county, and they really laid it on Chesapeake, didn't they?
Yeah, I mean, Chesapeake right now, number 2 in the 3A East, so they're doing that 30-0 to another playoff team. Yeah. That's pretty impressive in that game. Cameron Huff, 162 yards. He also had 3 touchdowns in that 30-0 victory. Patriots beat Broadneck 38-22. They jump over North Point.
The bonus points.
The bonus points becomes huge, and Old Mill is going to blow away this region if they beat Annapolis, because you're going to get that much more bonus points from beating Annapolis. You're going to get at least another 16-point game, because Annapolis is likely to be an 8-win team with 8 points for being a 4A school. So that's another 16 points that they have. So just huge in the battle for home field. And right now, Annapolis, if they lose that game, looking like they're going to be the number 3 and traveling to North Point for a first-round game.
But Annapolis could give North Point a game. I think Annapolis, even on the road, could do something there in the playoffs. I have to say, our high school sports editor at the Capitol, Bob Hoke, he has changed Cameron Huff's name to Hoke, has adopted him as a relative. I saw the kid was Player of the Week in the Capitol this weekend. Bob Hoke is claiming him as a relative because he's such a good player.
Bob needs some tax dependence at this time of year? I don't know. Arundel bouncing back with the 58-6 win over Northeast. Still not out of the conversation. They do need some help. They would need another trip up from Broadneck along the way to get in the battle for that 4th spot. But, of course, that's why we always play the games. You got to go out and finish off the season. Andrew Cassard, 39-yard pass from Deontay Thompson in that one, 58-6. Arundel was up 35-0 at the end of one. South River in the backyard battle against Southern. They win it by a score of 20-9.
Southern actually played them pretty tough.
Pretty tough game. Pretty tough game. But, again, there's still some things that need to be done there. South River, what an up-and-down team.
Yeah, they're strange. They're hard to figure.
I think we all go back and wonder, where did the win against Broadneck come from? Not to question it, but, obviously that was a huge game in the standings early in the season, and we thought South River might be a team that is really going to propel themselves into that bottom of the playoff race, but a couple of trips along the way, but they're still at 500. Glen Burnie, Dami Adekunjo, 123 yards and a touchdown in that game. And Meade beat Severna Park 19-14. Over on the private school side,
private schools took their lumps this week.
Except for AACS. And
G.J. Golot and company.
Sam Akinakami, 142 yards rushing, 65-yard interception return for the Eagles in that one as they beat Mount Carmel by a score of 20-9. Otherwise, Spalding really caught with, after the Gilman game, you've got to come back, play another perfect game against McDonough. Didn't happen for the Cavaliers. They lose 31-14. John Carroll beats St. Mary's 49-14. Pilati over Severn by a score of 22-12. But I mean, AACS, a team that for a couple years there really took some lumps, seem to be rising back up to where they were a few years ago as a perennial conference contender at the end of the year.
You got to give the coaching staff credit. They've got that program back on sound footing, and that win, by the way, clinched a berth in the C Conference Championship for AACS. They'll play that in November. No, really, really impressive to see that program turn around. DJ Golot, we've talked about him on the show a lot. The quarterback's outstanding. So they got some weapons, and it's good to see them being a factor in the C Conference. St. Mary's has really slid here the last couple of games, the Curley and John Carroll game, and granted, those are the creme de la creme of that B Conference, but they laid it on the Saints. Big game this week. Severn St. Mary's, the Severn River Classic. We'll see what happens there. A chance for both of those teams to finish with some pride. And as you mentioned, Spalding McDonough, it was kind of an elimination game.
Yeah.
Had Spalding beaten McDonough, they would have been out of the contention for the A Conference Championship. But now they are still alive, and in the meantime, Spalding is out.
Do you St. Mary's guys, you call all your Severn buddies and make some bets like who's going to take who out on a yacht or something like that?
One of the greatest
Saints
things
win?
that ever happened recently was that the Touchdown Club of Annapolis has its annual golf tournament right around this time of the year. And it literally was 1 week after the Severn St. Mary's game. And we always give every golfer that participates a pullover, and it was St. Mary's colors. And all of the Severn guys, athletic director Julian Dominic and a whole bunch of other former Severn guys just couldn't believe it. They thought the St. Mary's was showing up. It's always a great rivalry, and you can bet that all of the guys at St. Mary's played at St. Mary's, and they're friends. We're friends with all these guys that we played against at Severn. This is always a big one.
All right, holler at your boy next year for the golf tournament. I'll just let you know about that.
Right.
I'd come play since we didn't get to play at Navy
Yeah,
this
that's
year.
right.
Youth football playoffs are all set. Got some makeup games that were in the middle part of the week. The brackets are up at aacounty.org. Go to the Rex and Parks page for team schedules. Championship Day for the Americans going to be on Saturday, November 14th at Chesapeake High School this year.
Yeah,
Northeast
it's a
is not
change.
available, so we're all going to Gibson Island.
Right. And
November
that's a nice
14th.
facility.
Yeah,
That's a
terrific facility. More importantly, it's a great facility to keep people off the field. You don't, and I'm serious. Every playoff game is on a turf facility. I'm telling you right now.
Stay in the stands.
Warning all of you right now. If you have no badge, you're not getting on the field. It's
Right.
that simple. Don't give our field monitors any harassment. You don't have a badge. You don't have an ID with your picture on it that everybody gets at the beginning of the year. We don't care who you're with, who you're associated with. You don't get on the field. The rules are very simple this week. Don't give our people the problem, and let's keep the focus on the kids, because at the end of last year, we had a couple of people that took it to an extraordinarily terrible level, and we're going to be looking for people. If you're on the field, you're going to be asked to leave if you don't have a badge. But looking forward, we're going to have the championship weekend. We're going to have 4 games on Friday night, the 13th. We're going to have a full day of American on Saturday, and then a full day of national play as well at Chesapeake High School on Sunday for the national as well. So I'm looking forward to what should be a great weekend, but hey, you got to get there first.
Right.
And the big rematch this week in the 12U, the Chargers got revenge against Gork, so they've split 2 regular season matchups
So
now.
Okay.
Everybody's
everybody's
hoping that they're going to be playing November 14th.
But you never know. I've seen the teams get upset in this
All the
playoffs.
time.
That's what I love. We'll be at Championship Day, as always, Gridiron Review. We'll be there doing interviews on the field and getting some footage. Always a great day out there. And remember, send us your video highlights. We were going to try to show every week on the show a highlight of some. We'll pick one. Pete will review them. Pete, give them the address as to where to send that.
RPMEDH88 at aacounty.org. We'll look through your videos, and if they're presentable on air technically, we will get them on the air and highlight some of the stars of tomorrow right here on the Gridiron Review. But hey, the playoffs are at hand. Everybody behave.
Right.
Let's play football. Let the refs ref. Let the coaches coach. More importantly, let the players play. It's that simple. Coming up, we'll talk college football. Maryland's first game under Mike Locksley was an almost. And we'll talk about the games coming up this weekend as well. Maryland with another chance. They play undefeated Iowa. Navy taking on South Florida. We'll review those games coming up when we join you on the Gridiron Review. Welcome back, Bills. So many eyes on Maryland last week. First game under Mike Locksley, a Penn State team that's not a great 6-2 team after beating Maryland in that contest. But, I mean, a team that struggled with Army, almost lost to Army in Happy Valley 20-14, and the Black Knights have only won one game this year. But it was an opportunity for Mike Loxley. Here's my question. Where was all this offense when he was the offensive coordinator?
Well, where maybe, possibly, Randy Edsall was putting a handcuff on Mike Loxley because he was very decisive in deciding that Perry Hills was going to be the quarterback. And not only that, we're going to use him to run the ball, which is his strength, which in turn set up some passing attack. And this was a game that went up and down the field. There was no little defense played. Neither team could really stop one another. And it kind of came down to who would have the ball last. And it turned out to be Penn State and Christian Hackenberg, who didn't have a great game in terms of completion percentage, but threw for a lot of yards because a lot of his passes went for big yardage.
Big plays.
Yeah, big plays. And Maryland defense was more aggressive, which was good on some counts, but also exposed the back end to those big plays. At M&T Bank Stadium, which is a big
good crowd.
Yeah, it was a great crowd, a great atmosphere, a nice stage, and Maryland, it would have been a huge win for Mike Loxley, and it doesn't get any easier this week going out to
I think
Iowa.
their only other chance to win a game is against Rutgers in the finale now. They're
Probably.
going to be underdogs in every game, I think, the rest of the way, except maybe Rutgers, and that's on the road, so they might be even an underdog
Right. It's tough
in that
sledding in
situation.
that Big Ten conference.
Yeah, no doubt about that. They play unbeaten Iowa coming up this week. Meanwhile, Navy hosting South Florida. Halloween, trick-or-treat, noon, Saturday, Navy Marine Corps Memorial Stadium. Mids played probably one of their poorer offensive games, but I think you tip your cap to Tulane. Kenya Matalolo warned us about this during the week, and he turned out to be a prophet.
Right.
That front for Tulane was very, very good, and it wasn't until the Mids got some turnovers in the fourth quarter where they got some separation to finally win the ball game against Tulane. But, you know, coming off of a bye week, it's always a crapshoot.
Yeah.
You just never know what you're going to get from your football team. And perhaps if you're Navy, you're happy you got that out of the way now, because if you look from this week to the rest of the season,
a grind.
It is an unbelievable grind in the American Athletic Conference, which this week had 3 teams ranked and Navy receiving votes in the coaches poll as well. So you're talking about 4 teams that are getting national attention, and what a month this is coming up for the midshipmen potentially.
All right, well, going back to the Tulane game for a moment, first of all, great defensive line. It was hard to believe when you looked at the statistics of what they were giving up, yardage and points, when Kenya Matalolo kept saying they have one of the best defensive fronts we'll see all season, and he was including Notre Dame in that conversation. It was hard to believe, but sure enough, they came out and really punched Navy in the mouth. Talking to Ivan Jasper, the offensive coordinator, Tulane came out in a defensive front they weren't expecting. They thought they were going to do what they'd done against Georgia Tech 2 years in a row. They did not. They covered up every lineman.
Well, you give up 65 points, you have to change something if,
Right,
you're,
well,
if you're serious about making adjustments as a coaching staff, and they
Right,
did that.
Right, well, they did, and Navy wasn't expecting it, and they got punched in the mouth. There's no other way to say it. The Navy offensive line had trouble getting any kind of movement up front. They flooded the box with 9 guys and dared Navy to throw, and that's really what offensively, what turned the tide is that Keenan Reynolds did complete some big passes downfield. But you're right, looking at the American Athletic Conference, Pete, I wrote this week that I think it's a better league than, say, the ACC, the Atlantic Coast Conference. I think the top end of this league is legit. Temple's going to have a chance to make a statement this weekend against Notre Dame at home in Philadelphia. That's a real opportunity for the American Athletic Conference to make a strong statement. And then Memphis and Houston just keep on rolling along.
Memphis did make a statement by beating Ole Miss of the
They
SEC.
sure did.
Houston has a chance to play an SEC team this week, even though it's Vanderbilt, but it is an SEC team. So if Houston wins that game, that's another feather in the cap against a Power
Absolutely.
5 league. And right now, you got some teams carrying the banner right now for this league overall.
Right. Well, and you have to say that the American is a leader in the clubhouse for the Group of 5 bid to the New Year's Six Bowl. Toledo was another program out there that's having a great year.
They've played the terrible portion of their schedule.
They barely beat Massachusetts, which is a team that's only recently moved up from FCS.
Well, they were trailing 28-10, rallied to win that game. But they've got the kingpins in the MAC, the Bowling Greens of the world, coming up here in the latter part of the schedule. And we'll find out if that win over Arkansas that they have in their cap as well. Got to give them credit for that. But I think the American clearly right now has certainly showed itself on a week-by-week basis. And keep in mind, Memphis, Houston, Temple, Navy all play each other in the month of November.
It's a round robin.
Yeah,
There's going to be some losses.
Except for Navy not playing Temple. They missed Temple because Temple's on the other side. But those teams all play each other. So what a month that's coming up for the American Athletic Conference. Bill and I will be in Annapolis. Hope to see you there Saturday at noon for Halloween for the Mids and South Florida. When we come back,
I thought you'd be wearing your Redskins shirt today, Pete.
we could be singing Hail to the Redskins. Hail to the Redskins.
And goodbye, Ravens.
John Harbaugh has got to go into the meeting room every week and go, what in the world do we have to do? 6 losses by 1 possession or less for this Ravens team. We'll talk about those games when we come back on the Gridiron Review. And welcome back. Bill, what more can John Harbaugh do for the Ravens? Another 1-possession loss. Every loss of the 6 by 8 points or less. They're driving for what could have been a potential tying score this week if they'd have gotten the 2-point conversion against Arizona. Joe Flacco gets picked off in the end zone with 13 seconds to go. For a team that has enjoyed so much success under John Harbaugh, hamstrung by the cap, when you have injuries, you can't really necessarily go out and acquire the kind of talent that can really perform at a high level. And unfortunately, they are going through one of those years where everything you cycle through in terms of personnel when you have an injury doesn't work. And right now they find themselves at an improbable 1-6.
All right, well, I mean, it's just so many problems for the Ravens personnel-wise. And really, the more I look at this team, it's remarkable that they are playing so many close games. It just shows the kind of the pride.
I mean, they lost the left side of their offensive line the other night and still right there to the end.
That secondary is a disgrace to NFL football. As you mentioned, they signed Joe Flacco to a $122 million contract, and you cannot pay anyone else. That's why Anquan Bolden is not on this team, Torrey Smith, on and on. And that's the other part of this on the other side of the ball. The wide receiver core outside of Steve Smith is a disgrace. Those guys can't get separation. It's really, really disappointing to see this happen to the Ravens, a proud franchise. And what about those officials, Pete? My goodness, that has to be some of the worst NFL officiating.
Wait a minute, hold on. I was arguing with some. First of all,
this means I'm an eligible receiver.
Yes, Ronald Torbert messed that play up.
He was looking right at him.
He's a newer referee, though, and I think when you're a newer referee and you're not familiar necessarily with that, I think that's part of the reason why he botched that. He's not looking for it. And that's his fault for not being mechanically sound as a referee. But let's go back, and this was the one play that everybody was arguing about.
Chris Johnson sat on Brandon Williams' lap.
It wasn't. He didn't give himself up.
His progress was not stopped.
No, right. If you look at the replay, he still kept. They even slowed it down, and you could see he kept rolling forward. So you've got to play to the whistle. John Harbaugh, incorrect. If they'd have hit him there, they would not have gotten flagged because the play was not over, nor had the whistle sound. As long as the player doesn't lead with his head in that situation, no whistle had sounded. You play to the whistle. What was remarkable to me was how many members of the media in the Baltimore media are almost cheerleaders for the Ravens as opposed to covering the game. I mean, I was amazed at some of the things I was seeing on Twitter. There has to, you're a member of the media, you have to remain objective in terms of covering the game. Now, if you and I are BSing down at the local pub or whatever, sure, we can talk about that stuff. But it was almost as if they're begging, and I just found that to be very uncomfortable to me in social media the other night. Yes, you question the Torbert call. The NFL has obviously admitted that. But these referee crews are not out. They're not in the locker room before the game. Hey, we're going to hose the Ravens tonight. Okay, let's, anything close, let's call it for the Cardinals.
I think it just goes to show the season the Ravens have had. Everything that could possibly go wrong.
There's
been some really kooky things happen to the Ravens.
That's exactly right. There have just been some breaks that have not gone their way. And when you're playing, here's the thing about it, though. When you're playing in one-possession games like they are,
this stuff means a lot.
It makes these things magnified
Absolutely.
That much more. That's what it really comes down to. And I think you got to give John Harbaugh and his staff a lot of credit for keeping them in the games when personnel-wise, they have every right, I think, in some cases, to be out of a lot of these games. Because this schedule, outside the Browns here, in the early portion of their schedule's been brutal.
Well, and the traveling, the ridiculous West Coast trips.
Yeah,
that's a killer.
That's absurd.
Well, it'll be interesting to see if they can finish strong. That's what John Harbaugh came out yesterday
John Harbaugh's not going to let them let
he said
down.
It's not over. The story of the season is not written. We will see what happens
until they're mathematically eliminated. John Harbaugh is going to have that team prepared to play every Sunday. And you know what they're going to do? They're going to ruin it for somebody else.
They probably will.
That's what they're going to do that in November and December. Meanwhile, the Redskins, hey, we got 3 wins. 3.
It was looking ugly at 24-0, wasn't it?
It was indeed. I was out at my daughter's soccer game during the first half. Kept checking. I'm like, whoa! It was just 17. Now it's 24. I'm like, wow, how did that happen?
And that's on a code red day.
It was a code red.
Jay Gruden.
Maybe it was a Mountain Dew code red day. I don't know. But, you know, you got to give Kirk Cousins a lot of credit. There's still the racial component out there in social media and in fan world that still doesn't want to give the guy any credit. He played a brilliant second half of football.
No turnovers. That's
the other
the
day.
difference.
No turnovers, 317 yards passing. This is the third time now he's led his team down the field. If you count the Falcons game, 4, because remember, he had 24 seconds against the Falcons. He led them into field goal range to get them into overtime in that contest. So this guy is making progress. Jay Gruden and Sean McVay are making progress with him in terms of what plays they're calling. They still can't run the ball, which is why that's what was more impressive to me about Cousins bringing them back. Buccaneers knew they were throwing.
He had to shoulder the load.
Couldn't stop them.
Yeah, no, that was a great win for the Redskins. No matter how you slice it, going into a bye week, that dramatic comeback's got to be one of the best comebacks in.
It was the best in team history. They never come back from 24 down.
It's unbelievable, and it went from being booed at halftime to the Redskins
Euphoria.
Faithful.
Jack Kent Cook once said it was a state of euphoria.
That's right. That's right. I did have to wonder who was the Redskins player who complained about getting booed. You're losing 24-0 in a game that your coach has called a code red. You deserve to be booed, but you know what? Whatever Gruden said at halftime, and I heard that he lit into his team.
He was loud.
It was
Turn
made
the volume
a difference. So great win for the Skins, and hope they can continue it. It'll be nice to see them. I mean, it's not like this NFC East is a powerhouse. I mean,
oh no,
I watched
Giants
the Giants and
game.
Cowboys play to a. That wasn't pretty.
You know, here's the thing: if you're the Buccaneers too, how in the world do you single cover Jordan Reed,
Right.
one-on-one?
He's a playmaker.
A guy at his size. Are you kidding me? How do you not have a linebacker or a safety underneath of that route? Because you know they're either going fade or they're going slant route to Jordan Reed. They weren't hiding what they were doing.
No, and they paid the price for it.
Yeah.
And we should mention, this is the kind of things that can turn around a season. Was it Rashad Breeland that ran across the
Deshaun
field
Goldson,
to get a guy out of
Stop
bounds?
Doug Martin instead of scoring a touchdown. They only got a field goal. That enabled the Redskins to stay within one score.
Can change a season. It really can.
Because he actually hurt his hamstring on that play.
Right. I mean, that to me spoke volumes, and that's the kind of thing that can ignite your team. And you know that Jay Gruden and the coaching staff is pointing directly to that play and saying that's the effort.
But you know what it also tells you? It tells you they're still playing for Jay Gruden.
Good.
So he hasn't lost the locker room for
That's
any of
right.
you that were concerned out there. Redskins a game out in the NFC East behind the 4-3 New York Giants. Again, that'll do it for our program this week. Please, I remind you, I beg you, if you're going out to any of these youth football games this weekend,
behave.
Please act your age. I'm serious. As adults, we don't need it out there. The kids don't need to see that. Right. Somebody's going to win. Somebody's going to lose, okay?
And this is the most special time of the year. This is the playoffs. This is stuff the kids are going to remember forever. And let's just have it be great sportsmanship and an enjoyable time on the field. And that's what matters, what happens on the field.
You know, the referees are refereeing youth football. They're not refereeing the NFL. As we saw in the Ravens game this week, you know what? NFL referees, they're the best in the business.
They make mistakes.
So are youth football officials, too. They're not going to be perfect. Just watch the game, let them play the game, and enjoy the game. And when you go home, everybody can have orange slices and juice boxes and Oreo cookies after the game. That's my recommended post-game snack. That'll do it for us this week. We'll see you next week with another edition of the Gridiron Review.